And welcome to the Mobile Strategy Maturity Model presentation. We get a lot of questions about building an app center or an app competence center or an app factory. I'm going to share with you how you can measure how far you are in your mobile strategy. In today's workshop, I'm going to cover a couple of topics. The first of all, mobile strategy in general, the market trends. If building an app center or an app factory or an app competence center, what are the key challenges we see in the market with our customers? And then focusing on the mobile strategic maturity model. Introduction. Then the first item of today is talking about organization and strategy. And then zooming in on how can you quickly assess on which level of mobile strategy maturity you are at this moment. Well, of course, it all starts with this tiny square on your mobile phone. It's called an app. It's a tiny square, but recent studies show that the average customer doesn't open at least a commercial mobile app more than 20 times. 1/3 of the people of the apps use them still beyond the 30 days. So that's quite a risk. If we want to outlive these statistics for consumer apps and also want to ensure the added value for employees or business apps, you need to ensure a efficient app production which understands the app purpose, the desire of the user, the task of support, and the relevant use of features. And of course, the understanding the value of your app or your apps and how to produce those, understanding the app life cycle, and also the dynamics of your complete app ecosystem is very important to achieve your mobile strategy business going successfully. Of course, you have your app for a certain reason. For the commercial listeners to this webinar, most of the time it's a mix between acquisition, retention, and efficiency. For the non-profit or government, still you could have other goals for your app, but in the end, we all want to achieve something with your app, and you want to measure your success. The top orange ones are most of the time for our commercial customers. The main reason why to use an app. They want to increase their sales, they want to monetize their relationships, and they want to leverage their investments and work more efficient. In the gray boxes, you see how you can measure it. The key performance indicators, those are the meters on your dashboards, and that's how you want to keep control over your app, or if you have more than one app, your app ecosystem. So you have your goals for your strategy, your mobile strategy, and of course you would like to have a return on that. For the commercial, that is the combination between acquisition, retention, and efficiency. And that is done most of the time with a combination of business to consumer apps, business to business, business to employee apps, or consumer to business. And each app has to be developed. You have an app idea. You have feature ideas, and all of that will come together. Probably, if you have an app portfolio or an app pipeline, it will look something like this: a core app, most of the time to your biggest chunk of consumers or users, and that is surrounded by a number of employee apps, business apps, or other apps. Partner apps as well. So that is when we talk about an app ecosystem. And that app ecosystem is being challenged. First of all, for the tech market, you have at this moment a huge fragmentation challenge. You have your platform diversity. There is iOS, there's Android, Windows, but also Firefox operating system, and Titan are entering the market. So besides of the platform diversity, there's also the operating system diversity. There's a lot of versions there. And after that, there's also the hardware diversity. Android at this moment has almost 12,000 different hardware versions. And of course, then is the App Store diversity. And all of those fragmentation challenges do have to deal with that within your app ecosystem. Your ecosystem is also challenged by customers, and if you are looking towards the internal apps or the employee apps or the enterprise apps, there is a question about we want to have more apps, we want to have more complex apps. The time to go to market of the apps is going much faster. There's a need for faster delivery, and at the same time, you want also have to lower your project risk. The apps has to perform higher, but also your app competence center is a question of higher performance. The other way before that your app ecosystem is being challenged is the difference between web development and app development. There are differences in development processes. There are differences in backend approach. I will talk about that later. There's a difference in people. There's a difference in processes. There's a difference in technology. Looking at that backend, there's a huge difference in development skills. There's a difference in collaboration between the business and the rest of the IT organization, and there's a huge demand of speed. And not to forget, also how to deal with feedback and have rapid changes. And that's a total different environment and different challenges than that you're used to from your web development. And of course, your app ecosystem is challenged because there is a lot of uncertainties. You don't know enough to go in the right direction. And that knowledge gap can be about security, about connectivity, reuse of components, but also a bit more softer knowledge gaps. Am I making the right choice? What if my choice is causing mobile acceleration delay? How do I keep up with the fast-paced change and still uphold my quality? All this is important when you're assessing your app ecosystem and also assessing the knowledge gaps that you're facing at this moment. So in summary, you are looking for results for your apps. You're looking for increase in acquisition, increase in retention, and increase in efficiency. And that can be reached by a solid app ecosystem, which is challenged by knowledge, fragmentation, security, connectivity, reuse, and speed. And there's one topic missing, and that is your user. Your user can be your employee, your business partner, or your consumer. But this user is very important in your mobile strategy, and certainly on your return on mobile strategy, because you can want results as much as you like. You can have great app ecosystem, and you can deal with challenges. In the end, the user is the one with the biggest power. And when you're offering apps and app ecosystems to users, whether that is consumers or that is employees, there is you need to take into account the life cycle of that user. Is the user in need of something, and then he wants to research something and select and purchase? So is he in the discovery stage and the marketing or sales, or is he in the service and support stage and needs he to be support on that side? It's not really necessary to be on the left side loop or the right side loop, but you have to be aware that customers can be highly dynamic in their sales needs or in their service needs. On the right, you see a different approach of how to keep track of your users, and that is looking at the app itself or at your app ecosystem itself. And that is how do you make your app successful? How do you make your app successful in the App Store? And how do you encourage your customers or your employees to open an app, or go to the App Store at first, open the app, discover the app, fall in love with the app, and then attempt to do some simple tasks. And if you go to that stage, then the customer or the employee want to attempt more complex tasks. If you are successful in that, then your user will update the app, and that will lead into a successful app lifecycle. More traditionally, the left one is looked at. So how can we support our user when he is in a buying stage and when the user is in a supporting stage? The right one is getting more and more important. And how do we get our user through a successful app lifecycle? A way to do that is to have an outside-in approach. So on the left side, you have your strategic business objectives. Can be anything. In this example, it is a mix between acquisition, retention, and efficiency. And on the right, you have your user needs. That can be an employee, that can be a consumer. And he or she has goals, has emotions, and interactions. And the key is to get insights into that goals and emotions and interactions, and let's see which issues arise. And you can use this same format if you are assessing not your employee or your customer, but you're assessing your app competence center or your app center. What are the insights of this app center, of this user? What are the issues? And what is the impact of those issues? And how can we solve those issues by innovations to have a successful app lifecycle or have a successful return on mobile? And at the bottom, of course, there are trends and accelerators. Things are happening in the market with your competitors, with your technology vendors, and also in the media. So if you are looking at this cycle, not only look at your own business strategic objectives, but also take as a basis the user needs to have a successful mobile strategy. So looking at the market, what are the general market trends? Well, there we see a lot of movements towards coming from a opportunistic mobile strategy on the top left into a more strategic one. There are even companies now who are claiming, we are mobile first. Well, in all honesty, I think the majority of all companies on the top left still in the opportunistic stage, where you have an unfettered production and responsibilities of mobile development, and perhaps a small minority of companies have big plans but still working on the execution. So I think, and that's what we see with most of our customers as well, that most of the customers are still in the opportunistic stage of mobile strategy. They want to go to strategic. It's a huge shift and an expansion of customers who say, okay, now we want to move away from that opportunistic app strategy and towards a more strategic approach. I think the majority of the customers are now in the middle, making plans, making assignments to people within the company to make this happen. If you look at the second one on the left, mobile strategy center of gravity, we see that now happening exactly, coming from a reactive IT department, talking about a mobility center of excellence or an app center or an app factory. It doesn't really matter what name you give it. but there are strategic choices now going on with a lot of companies talking about a mobility center of excellence. Also, if you go to the mid left, the users, coming from the opportunistic point of view, is most of the time it's customers only, with some basic informational interactions. You see a fast-paced acceleration into also mobile workers, sophisticated offerings, and also transactional driven, which needs, of course, a more sophisticated back-end integration, and the outside-in approach of what is important for our employees and what is important for our users are leveraged at this moment. So this is when we're looking at mobile strategy maturity. We are looking at these three pillars. Are you still in an opportunistic one, or are you in the transition to strategic? Are you strategic, or are you already one of the few that are in transition to mobile first? And let's be clear, this is not a static, scientifically a model. It can be that you're still opportunistic in basis, but you're already working for a common mobile architecture. So you can see a shift in different topics. So we are looking at the average proposition of your mobile strategy. Are you opportunistic? Are you in transit to strategic? Or are you strategic? Those at these days are the most important stages. So you see that there's a lot of movement from these opportunistic towards strategic, or in the transition to strategic, and I think that I think almost most of you will recognize that first point. Early days of mobile adoption, a lot of experimentation, department buyers working with agencies or boutiques to develop their first apps, without a lot of coordination, without a lot of integration, more or less the 15 years ago with the web. We need to be there. You also see that at this moment, the experimentation and the piloting are making a way. Mobile is offering and showing a significant business value. And also the movement from consumer market to employee market to enterprise mobility. If you're not following that in this pace, you will have a competitive disadvantage. Yes, the consumer market is still growing at an incredible pace, but the enterprise apps are now really picking up pace as well. So the experimentation stage is, I think, for every customer we have, and what you see also in the market, is a done deal. And now it's more about the thoughtful approach of mobility. How can we maximize the value of mobility, but also knowing that you're not having a lot of time to keep that competitive advantage. Looking at the enterprise focus, you see that mobility is still high on the list. You see that on number 4. You see that mobility is changing customer behavior, employee behavior, and vice versa, of course. Employees and customers are changing the mobility as well. Most of core app projects have been small-scale efforts, sometimes with the funding from departments. Now the enterprise apps are really picking up pace and are going to lead in a very short term. So on the right, you see that the mobile technologies is high on the list, but you see also a lot of things that are closely related to that. IT modernization, customer experience management, resource efficiency management tools, social media, bring your own or carry your own device to work, all are closely related to mobile technologies. So, and that's why it's really going to be of strategic value in this year. Also, in the transition from who is the main buyer or the owner of the mobile strategy, still there are two key players of mobile strategy. That is marketing, sales, and field service, or that is IT. There are a couple of reasons why marketing is still a key buyer or a key trend player for the mobile strategy. Well, there's not really a central coordination body for mobile apps. That can be a reason. IT lacking the skills to build the necessary attractive and user-friendly mobile apps. IT is too overburdened with other things. When developing the native of the mobile apps, it can be done fairly inexpensive, and that's why it can be funded more easily by the business. Reason for IT as key business is because the integration with the enterprise systems is really picking up pace at this moment. However, although IT hasn't had a really big role in the starting stage of mobile, now the more complex and transformative the mobile initiative become, the more IT is intimately involved. So you see at this moment at least a higher degree of collaboration between business and IT when customers are moving from this opportunistic mobile strategy stage into a strategic stage of mobile. Short slide on the operating system fragmentation. It's still highly dynamic. You see two key players, iOS and Android. Windows Phone, though, is growing as well. It's now the third OS. Other operating systems are also joining the market. So we expect that the players of the OS fragmentation will change, but the OS fragmentation itself will stay, and that is something to keep in mind. When building an app competence center or an app factory, there's always the question, what is the paradigm we're going to use? Well, I think, you know, when you're facing one or two apps, you could look for a single platform with a full capability, and then you would lean into the native one. I think that a lot of you will agree that there is native pain in development, but there's also native pain in maintenance. Certainly when you want to grow your app ecosystem, not only for one consumer segment, for more consumers, and also to your employees. Remember also the slide with the fragmentation problems. Very important in your choice if you want to develop native or want to lean towards the right side of the spectrum, or also a combination of that, and we'll come back to that later, leaning in towards the HTML5 or the hybrid ones. HTML5 is really becoming quickly a standard for writing the apps across the multiple platforms. So that is something that you have to really have a focus on nowadays. And of course, talking about the mobile strategy and the maturity, it is the choice which paradigm you are choosing or which combination of paradigms you're choosing. If you are moving towards building, creating, or improving your app center, there are a number of challenges we are looking at. Of course, there's always the organization challenge. I talked about the challenges of the app ecosystem. One of them was the transformation from web to app. There's a huge demand for customers to say we have a lot of developers. We have a lot of developers ready for our web development. How can we enable them towards a app development? And of course, organization changes will mean that you have to look into technology. It's a combination of people and processes. On the right, you have your transition challenge. When you have opportunistic mobile strategy, then you have different organizational challenges than when you are in a transition toward your strategic approach. That is quite a hard combination. So how do I build an agile app competence center, which is up to the challenge of my current organization, as well as my future transitional challenge? And of course, what we also see is what we call the app center squeeze. And the app center squeeze is in the middle. You have your app center with the technology, people, and processes. On the left, there is the business pushing with their technology and culture and people and processes. And on the right, there is your back end, which is also a key player here in the acceleration of your mobile strategy development. They all as well have their own culture, their own processes, their own technology, and their own people. So on the left, you have the squeeze from the business. Most of the time, slow business justification of apps, but then also a very fast go-to-market requirement. A lot of growing of integration requests or requirements, certainly towards the next wave of consumer apps and employee apps, and the demand of the various apps when you're looking to business partners or employees or consumers is the challenge to leverage the supply and demand. On the right, you have the backend, and of course, working as an app center with the backend integration. You see that the three words there is an incredible challenge to keep up with the demand and the capabilities of the app center. Of course, mobile developers don't speak the backend infrastructure language. It's a different culture. It's a different pace. And that's why one of the first things that companies do at this moment is enable backends for that mobile integration. And of course, privacy and security is main focus of that backend, and that will boomerang back into your app center requirements and into your app requirements where you need that fast go-to-market requirement. So that is the app center squeeze, which is really a challenge for the app center, which is in progress, is growing, has organizational challenges, has transformational challenges, and is also squeezed between business and backend. Also, the difference between web and app is this. An example for this is the agility of the apps. In this example, there's a sales rep using an app, and the changes of the app is handled in the same way as other applications problems. And you see on the right the app lifecycle. You have to keep in mind, what is this process doing with the app lifecycle? The app lifecycle is incredibly fast. If an app doesn't fit the need of the consumer nor the employee, you will stop using it, period. So, and that's why it is on the left I hope you can recognize that as well. If you come into a change management process that is built on a web change management process, so does it fit the requirements? Where IT has to review the request. Is it approved? Then it's going to the app developer who's going to design the change, the code the change, the test the change, deploy, and then ask your user to download the app. I think you all agree that this kind of approach of app agility is not really working for your successful app lifecycle. So looking at the need of app factory processes, what you see here is nowadays the current way of working. So you have your app initiators, whether that is that internal customer or an external customer. But let's see this. Let's think about an internal customer is talking to a designer, a lot of iterations. Their designer translates this design into a design document, which has to be interpreted by a developer. The developer and the designer then have a struggle to build what is designed, or they have to be redesigned, and the designer has to go back to the app initiator. Then finally, there is a release candidate, and most of the time, the release candidate has to be drawn back to the drawing board for a redo. Of course, it's a huge project risk, and it's a huge risk also for your budget. So what do we see in the very near future? There is a need for the instant apps proposal. So there are still the app initiators, but the designer and developer are more or less combined in one role, and we call that the app composer. The app composer is already enabled to compose that app, including the first release, including the backend integration. That has to be fine-tuned by a scripter or a web developer, of course, but you can imagine that the iteration from an app composer directly to a release candidate would have to be fine-tuned by a scripter, and directly results in a live app, results in an incredible increase of your app go-to-market speed, huge time increase, huge reduction of project risk. So this is something that we see in the near future. So looking at the maturity model, first of all, the disclaimer. When I talk about a maturity model, it is not a static model. It's not set in stone. It is a highly dynamic, but still a theoretical model, and it can help you to easily identify what your mobile strength and your mobile weak spots are. It can vary per industry. It can vary per customer, and it also needs to look at what are your maturity needs at this moment. So always when we perform mobile strategy assessments, then we also have a first an intake in what is the baseline and what are the needs of your specific situation. The maturity model is looking at a couple of questions. So what is your strategic goal? What is your current performance? And then you're able to match the goal and the performance, and so you can identify what are the gaps. And then when you identify the gaps, then you have to define what gaps do matter most, that stands in the way or can help me to get to the next level of mobile maturity. And then, of course, prioritize and close gaps. So first step is, what is our goal? talked about that before. Are you now opportunistic, and do you want to move into strategic? Or are you now in the middle between opportunistic and strategic? So are you in a transition stage? So it's quite important to know what are your first step is from your opportunistic into a transition stage, or directly from opportunistic to a strategic stage. And of course, sometimes you want to have your architecture in a strategic column, and your policies still lagging a bit behind, and they are still in the opportunistic one. So you can have your tailor-made menu on that. So looking at what are we going to assess, what are we going to look at when we look at a maturity model? So what are the axes of the assessment? Strategy and organization, we're going to look at that in a second. Second one is the app center initiation, but also the app initiation itself and the design. What about development and maintenance? Looking at test and distribution, security and management, and the backend and integration. Always keeping in mind the collaboration between the people, the processes, and the technology. So we have the goal, we have the axis, and then of course, then the what is my level, and how do I determine my level? So on the left, you see the axis: strategy and organization, initiation and design, development and maintenance. And on the top, you see the columns: opportunistic, strategic, and mobile first. On the right, you see an arrow with orange boxes. Who could say something about your level within a opportunistic stage, and the levels within a strategic stage? And it is a matter of looking at the practices observed within a axis, which say if a certain axis is for you leading to a current opportunistic outcome, or a current strategic mobility outcome, or even a mobile first outcome. So it's a matter of taking the average of the practices observed within the axis. And I will show you an example of that in the next slides. So after the level of determination, then you can go into gap identification. So the gray area, so on the outside you see the axis. The gray area is a predefined level need. So, and that is something that can be varied by industry or even by company. And that is something that you discuss, that this is my need. And also something that we see, okay, if we benchmark the different axes, this is somewhere where something that you really need to pay attention on. So the red lines in the middle is the outcome of the assessment, and then of course you have a gap identification. So let's look into, I think, 6 examples of the things we look into when you talk about strategy and organization. What are the highlights of that? And to make sure, what I do now in approximately 10 minutes, we do in about 1.5 and 2 days, and really assessing every aspect of every axis you show. So this is a rapid exercise I'm doing with you. Also keep in mind that there are a lot of players involved when you are looking and assessing your mobile strategy maturity. There is a CIO, CTO, but also the Scrum Master, designer, and tester. Not necessarily that there is a C-level involvement, but at the least the roles under that have to be involved and taken into account too. So you have always a marketing and sales role. You always have an information technology role. You also always have an IT role, and also always you have a architectural and infrastructure role. So it can be quite complex. So looking at the first example of items that you can assess when you look at your current strategy and organization is, okay, what is our mobile strategy center of gravity? Where are the responsibilities? Where does it matter most? First of all, you see the three pillars: opportunistic, strategic, and mobile first, and the generic characteristics of those. On the left, you see your reactive IT department. In the middle, you see already that there's talk about a mobility center of excellence or a app factory. And in the mobile first, you see it as a truly organization-wide first focus on mobile. So looking at, to assess in which level you are, you can look at practices observed. You can look at mobile awareness. What is the practice observed when you look at mobile awareness? Well, you see that there is awareness and there is competence, but it is still emerging. And there's also an emerging strategy for mobile. Looking at the practice observed for strategic for mobile awareness, you see that there are concrete plans or even a presence of a mobile excellence center. Point of contact, what we see a lot of times, if you are in an opportunistic stage, the point of contact is most of the time the business uses the most experienced developer. The point of contact in the strategic level is what the business knows the processes, where to go with your initiatives or concepts. And also these contacts and these processes are formalized. Looking at the lower left, the backend interfaces, when you're opportunistic, you see a lot of reactive backend connectivity and backend interfacing. When you are strategic, you see already a lot of proactive and roadmap planning they're facing. When the mobile first backend interfaces, per definition, every backend is mobile ready and mobile first. Another example to look at for assessing the level of strategy and organization is the paradigm strategy. So what are the development technologies? Which operation systems are we developing for? On which platform and in which development language are we using? On the left, the opportunistic, you see that customer is aware of the different possibilities, but still they are outsourcing a lot of times to agencies, and the agencies most of the time are depending on their own capabilities. So the agency will have the choice which paradigm to choose. When you're going strategic, in the previous slide, you already saw that there is a competence center in place, and that there is a well thought choice whether we go native, HTML5, hybrid on or on multi-platform. If you're looking at the practices observed, then you see on the development point of view, opportunistic is very short term, and the scope is developed to a certain project. What do we need for this project? And also it's hampered by the fragmentation of that paradigm. So there's not a lot of flexibility, and there's a lot of frustration in things they cannot do and they want to do. Looking at a more strategic approach, then you see that there's already a mix in paradigms. Sometimes it is preferred to do one app in native. The rest, most of the time, will be done multi-platform on HTML5 hybrid. Paradigms dynamics, you see on the lower left, you see that we also already see, even with our opportunistic level markets, that there is a shift already. And talking to those customers, the rationale of why they were choosing that paradigm is easily discussed and in between brackets undermined. So you can easily discuss. And when you're going into the practice observed for strategic, you see there's a well thought rationale of the mix and choices around the development paradigms. Another topic is app production scalability. How fast can we develop? And remember the squeeze between the development of, the business and the squeeze of the back end. So opportunistic, well, not really a focus on scalability. We call it a calculated risk. We do that as well, almost. I must say that those type of companies are rapidly decreasing. What you do see is that delivery of apps and apps ecosystems are slipping all the time. Strategically, you see that there are strategic technology choices that are made to cover features, devices, and the mobile availability of the backend system, and are really trying to deliver on time. Looking at the mobile first, then you see that the delivery is extremely reliable and already can be one-on-one compared with the high-end web delivery processes. Practices observed here very short. The organization Opportunistic, there are plans to professionalize the development team, talking about a app factory. Practice observed, organization spoken for the strategic. There is an app factory, perhaps it's streamlined, or they are in the transition or working on the streamlining of that app center already. And for the mobile first is the core practice observed is extremely flexible to upscale, and there's a full alignment with all business units. I think there are in Europe a handful of customers who are working at this moment at mobile first. App strategy, also talking about app ecosystem. Opportunistic apps are just an addition to the web, just in a multi-channel strategy. In a more strategic way, looking at the mobile uses, and apps are tailored to that. Practice observed, app vision is opportunistically spoken. What we see is that apps are developed in standalone projects, where they are in strategic. You're already looking at a app portfolio or an app ecosystem, where it really doesn't matter anymore if it is a core app, a app for another type of consumer, a business app, or an employee app. And of course, there is the user mix of the app maturity. Talk about that very briefly on the other slides. Opportunistic, basic interactions, almost most of the time, customers only or consumers only. Working to more the strategic ones is also including not only the customers, but also businesses, dedicated or occasional mobile workers, also more sophisticated. Practices observed when you talk about user mix and app maturity. The app profile for Opportunistic. Well, yeah, I think that's pretty clear. Only accessible content, easy accessible content with difficult integration. Where that is for the strategic ones, you have more access data with complex backends. For the mobile first app profile, it really doesn't matter who your user is. Everything is enabled enterprise-wide. Looking at interaction, Opportunistic, yeah, it's more or less the customer, but also one direction, like news or informational driven apps. Little interaction, no transactions. Where you go into the strategic level, you have your user-generated content, push mechanisms like push messages or transactional interactions. Almost the last example here, the app lifecycle management, where you go from opportunistic, where there's almost every project is be treated as a separate silo, where you're going into the strategic ones. You are looking for a multi-platform development with also the updates of all functionality. The management vision is also pretty clear what the difference is between opportunistic and strategic. You see that the management vision is for the opportunistic short-term functionality, but also unexpected back-end dependencies, and that will arise quite frequently, where the management vision for strategic is more or less focused on the roadmap and also with the back-end dependencies. What also practice observed is for the management vision is that there are tools aligned to facilitate the complete app lifecycle process. Last one on this is the policies. We see a lot of times for the opportunistic customers that there are some policies, whether it is for web format or style or icons or strategy or budget, but these policies, which are quite informal, they are also heavily user influenced. Where you go into the more strategic ones, it's a policy-driven approach, and it's also formalized on business unit level. The influencers are the business owners on the opportunistic ones. The influencers, when you are on strategic level, are determined at business usage. Description of policies is an opportunistic almost zero, where there is the written description in policies. For the strategic ones is much more developed. So these were a couple of examples how to look at your mobile strategy. Are you still in opportunistic? Are you in this transition to strategic? Or are you already strategic on different axes? Is something to look at. So you can easily assess for which practices observed you are still in opportunistic and which ones you are already in strategic. And then it's pretty easy to define the gaps and prioritize the gaps, which ones you want to solve. Once you solve the gaps, that is the last stage, and that is then need to how are you going to solve for those gaps? And then you have to look at your user needs, and your user needs are looking towards a internal one. So what is the needs of the business? What is the needs of my own app competence center? But also what is the needs of the backend part? And of course, what are the needs of my employees, business partners, and consumers? So once looking at those needs on a people, process, and technology point of view, then you will create your insights. Then you will identify your issues. What impact do those issues have on your strategic business objectives, and how can you innovate? And that is closing the gaps. So this will conclude my this webinar. We have a couple of minutes left on the for Q&A. So please type something in your question in the chat box. We can make sure that we can answer your question. If you have a question offline to ask me, here is my mail address. Also, if you have any other questions, or you are interested in a mobile strategy maturity assessment, don't hesitate to reach out to us and to help you towards the next stage, or to help you to assess in which stage you are at this moment. This was the first example of the webinar. The next webinar is the 13th of February. Then the topic will be app factory initiation, app initiation, and design. This concludes the webinar. It is recorded, so it will be it's possible to look and listen to it again. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. In the meantime, thank you so much for your attention, and hopefully talk to you soon. Thank you.